Hi everyone, welcome to the session of our web series Fireside Chat with Champions, in which we interview global business leaders asking them crowdsourced questions relevant to the biggest challenge we face today, COVID-19 and its impact on various aspects of business as well as society, and the way we can steer ourselves in current uncertainties. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mariana Vasconcelos, founder and CEO of Agrosmart. Agrosmart brings digital agriculture to developing countries with low internet infrastructure under tropical agronomic conditions, allowing farmers to make better decisions for a more productive and sustainable agriculture. It monitors crops, installing different sensors in the field, measuring up to 14 environmental conditions locally to identify the crop microclimate and real-time needs, while combining it with satellite imaging and weather forecasts to help farmers make better operational decisions. Mariana, a farmer's daughter, has experienced firsthand the difficulty of making decisions about crops based only on intuitions. That is why she created AgroSmart in 2014. She has degrees from Unifi, ESALQ, UCLA, and Singular University. She is a World Economic Forum Honor Technology Pioneer, was nominated MIT Technology Review Innovators Under 35, Forbes Under 30, and Fast Company 100 Most Creative. She is Global Ambassador for Thought for Food, an expert in digital agriculture, considered one of the 100 most influential agribusiness people in Dinero Rural Magazine. Thanks, Mariana, for accepting our invitation. Like you, I also work with farmers at the grassroots levels, and this makes me more amazed by the work you are doing. Can you let us know a bit more about you and your current interests and activities, especially great work you are doing at AgroSmart? The floor is yours, Marina.
Thank you, Deepak. It's a pleasure to be here. I think in those times of challenges, it's important to create connections so we can share knowledge and hopefully support each other, right? Well, I am Mariana. I'm 28 years old. I'm based out of Brazil. I was born in the farm, so I'm very used to the daily challenges and decision making in the field. And that's why we decided to create this company to support farmers to understand better crops and make better decisions. And we went evolving apart from just working with the farmers to work across the whole supply chain. So like we help farmers make decisions with irrigation, weather forecast, disease forecasts, and creating crops alerts in general. But we support seed and input companies in their R&D and creating digital offers that bring more value to their customers. We support food and beverage industries that source from smallholder and family farmers to help them to create climate resilience, track their sustainability KPIs, as well as allocate their labor, their agronomists that provide technical assistance in the fields, and create long-term sourcing strategies for more resilient supply chain that now is more important than ever. And we work with financial institutions like bank and insurance companies to support them to mitigate risk and create more accessible products for Latin America. I don't know how familiar you are, but like, for example, the insurance penetration in the US is like up to 90%, in Argentina 60%, in Brazil only 15%. And that's mostly because we have no data. So like we're really trying to feed data for the whole supply chain so we can make our agriculture, that is one of the largest in the world. Also, like in terms of curiosity, Brazil is the largest producer and exporter of coffee, sugar cane, orange juice, chicken meat, and like the second largest in soybean and corn. Like we are growing very fast, and it's really important that we lead Latin America into being more sustainable. So I think like that's in a nutshell a little bit of what we are doing. We are growing very fast. We are like 9 countries right now with more than 30,000 sensors connected, over 2 million acres covered. It's like we're really happy, like trying to bring this vision of how data can influence farming and make it more sustainable.
That's extraordinary introduction. You have achieved a lot at a very, very young age. So, and the best part is that you are deeply connected with the farms because you have got originated from the farms. So that's a great story the world need to hear about. So coming to the questions, I would like to understand Latin America in general and Brazil in particular is one of the world's leading food producing and exporting regions, as you have said. By utilizing its enormous natural wealth, a flourishing agriculture industry, and the family farming sector that is fundamental to the food security of its population. Typically, you don't find in the rest of the world that the family farms are having so much focus as it is in Latin America. Over past decade, it has brought close to 40 million people out of hunger from 67 million odd they were in 1990s. Work done in this region has been tremendous. But what, in your view, would be the COVID's impact on the Latin America's food security? Because according to Food and Agriculture Organization, right, a substantial number of people who have come out of hunger over past 3 decades might go back to those, I'll say that, levels because of the COVID impact. Also, I would like to understand a little bit about your perspective on the global food security.
Okay, so thinking about food security in general for Latin America, there is a double sword here, because we are one of the largest producers, which means we don't lack food. If the frontiers close and we don't export our food, and even if we do export our food, we have plenty of food for everyone. The problem is distribution and access. As many people are going back to be unemployed, like Latin America have done a great work in the last years to remove people from being poor to achieving middle class and having safety and access in general, not only with food but in health and so on. And now we are facing a lot of challenges with the quarantines and lockdowns, while we don't have the infrastructure to withhold the economy. So like the US have a lot of money to put into the economy and they're able to invest a lot, Latin American countries suffer more. So a lot of businesses are shutting down one after another, and a lot of people are getting unemployed. And I think that's where we might have a risk for food safety, not because we won't have food, but because they won't be able to afford it as they are going back to poor levels. On the other hand, you have farmers that are also struggling. So in Brazil, we have different effects of COVID in different crops. The grains farmers like soybean, corn, they're doing good because of the exchange rate with the dollar. The dollar is strong. So as they export, they are well capitalized and they're able to do investments to improve efficiency. The sugarcane industry is struggling with the oil price. As the oil price dropped, then you have less demand for ethanol, and therefore they're struggling. But they are usually larger groups, professionalized, and even though they involve some smallholders, they are within a chain where the corporation supports the outsourcing. So they are still remaining, and that's an important thing, using technology that brings them direct return on investment, because more than ever, it's important to reduce costs and guarantee that you're efficient so you can survive and produce at a low price and be competitive. But they are stopping some innovation programs and testing more stuff and focusing really in the tech that are bringing return on investment. On the other hand, we have some sectors that are struggling a lot. One of them is flowers. Brazil has a huge production of flour, like a whole region that produces flowers. And during the COVID, it stops being a priority. And people are afraid of flowers, so they don't buy flowers. So they are struggling a lot because they are perished. They need to achieve homes fast. So there's a lot of campaigns on how you should gift. We just went through Mother's Day, and now we are going to Valentine's Day here. So it's really important to gift people flowers so we can support that community. And also the fruits and vegetables are struggling. Brazil doesn't have a very strong cold chain like in the US. So most of the things are sold fresh, not frozen, or during transportation is hard as there's some roadblocks and they're trying to take there, but there's fewer workers to support. So there is a challenge there for fruits and vegetables to arrive on time. A lot of them are losing food, while some other people will be missing food and going hungry. So for sure, there's a lot of space for innovation to connect the two ends and be able to support them to make a business viable, so we can have people out of hunger and farmers supported.
Great articulation, and you covered a lot of very, very vital point that agriculture ecosystem is just not about food. Price drop in oil can ensure that actually farmers don't get the profits. Similarly, if you see people stop eating chickens, you have corn farmers sneezing. So that's the type of value chains we have created, unfortunately. So that brings us to a little bit of a more understanding. I would like to understand that if you see that the world has been talking before COVID that we need to switch from the secondary food chain, typically red meat and the poultry, to primary food chains, typically grains, oilseed, fruits and vegetables, so to be more sustainable, because secondary foods need more resources, right? So I would like to understand that what are the key issues according to you that and the solutions for that, whether in the food production, logistics, the consumption, so that going forward post-COVID, we'll have a world which will not be having the challenges of food security?
I believe the first thing is like to ensure that politics are supportive of agriculture food chains. So I think we as nations have to understand that we might depend on each other. We are lucky, we're privileged to have a country with so many production of so many varieties of food, but not all of the countries are. So if we're not able to cooperate in hard times, then they will suffer more. And I think that might drive a movement for local supply chain, right? Countries trying to develop again their local farming communities instead of just sourcing from other countries, and that again impact exporter countries like ours. So everything has a domino effect. So we have to be very careful. And I think now the demand for traceability, the demand for data will just increase as food safety becomes an issue. It was already an issue. Like Brazil has a very hard legislation to ensure like deforestation, to ensure not to have deforestation, to ensure food safety of the cows, the porks, and everything else, to guarantee that they're safe, they take the vaccines, they are not they don't have diseases, so they don't spread and create new pandemics. For example, like this one. So I think this will increase in priority for all of the countries. The regulations and the auditing, I think, will be more strict, and that creates like an impulse for technology that were already there to deploy faster, to have more data and more information across the supply chain. Because if we have data, we can have this traceability and this transparency that we need to know that we are safe and to be fair and consume. And also, like, there's another side of data that is, if we have data, we can support countries that don't have a local agriculture to develop one faster, right? Because we can learn faster on their reality and guide farming towards good practices and what they should do and what is good for cultivating in a specific place. Here we are seeing, not only in Latin America, I would say, but very strongly here, an increased demand for agtechs. As before, it was slowly getting digital. Right now, during the pandemic, many farmers are lacking labor, as the immigrations couldn't come for doing harvest to harvest the crops, or like they have fewer workers that need to keep social distance. So they need more information on where to guide those workers. So there is an increase on demand of the farmers for technology. And I think that will change the way we do agriculture. There is also a lot of questioning on how biodiversity and forests can hold on pandemics like that. And more sustainable practices are coming into place. So regenerative agriculture is growing and gaining attention from farmers. Here in Brazil, organic farming is very strong. Like, it's bigger every day. Even the agriculture ministry created a secretary just for sustainable farming, organics, and innovation. So we see like an increasing thing there. We think it's a niche market. Regarding the plant-based food, we believe it's a trend. It will increase a lot. It's also increasing here. But culturally, I think different from India, we are very dependent on meat. Meat is not only a thing of food, it's a cultural thing. It's how we gather together. So it's difficult like to see a change, but we are seeing more sustainable production of meat. So for example, our Embrapa, that is our research institution, is one of the largest in the world for tropical agriculture. They created a system for carbon neutral meat, right? So combining like the cattle with different crops and creating an ecosystem where you can neutralize carbon production from meat. And also regenerative agriculture being involved there, right? In the chicken and in other industries, we are not only industrial, but actually our family farmers also produce cattle, also produce chicken and porks. So it's not only an industrial thing, it's also part of the safety of many smallholder farmers. And that's why we have to be careful when we say, okay, let's just not do that. Because then we are infecting and putting to poverty many, many people in the world. So I think there's a trend from both sides. I think it will increase plant-based consumption, and I think meat consumption will become more sustainable more and more as we have more technology and more practices.
That's perfectly right, that we need meat, but it should be more sustainable than what it is today. And as Latin America is very strong in family farms and the integrated farming which Latin America is shown to the world, I think that should set the path for a lot of countries to follow. That was, you have been a very strong ambassador of your country as well as your region. So good to hear that. Now coming to something which you have been talking about, the digitization. So like, both you and me, we are of the same mindset that the digital insight are very, very critical for farmers' success and increase their profitability and productivity. But at the same time, it is also very hard to convince the farmers to start digitizing, while that trends might change because of COVID. So adoption of the technology or lack of it by farmer has been one of the biggest deterrent for people like you and me in developing countries, right, to be able to push through the right solutions which we want to do. According to you, how do you see digital technology adoption post-COVID, and also how it is going to impact the food and agriculture sector on one side? Also, are some few specific technology, do you think that they would be more suitable in such scenarios than some other technologies, and what those green shoots would be?
Okay. Well, I think it has been a movement for the past 3 years, like with the consolidations of the multinationals. I think apart from being regional or not, we have a dominance, right? From Corteva, that was a junction between DuPont and Pioneer, from Syngenta with ChemChina, Bayer and Monsanto, Arista and UPL, like all of them came together. So there is a strong consolidation of the market everywhere in the world. And they started dictating a new move. So it was not only anymore something from the ag techs, but the big corporations understood this is the era of data, and that they would position themselves and they would acquire and invest in technology. And I think that's what imposed, like, this is going to happen. It's not anymore just a thing from innovators, but it's something that the majority of the market believes, and it's going to happen. And then we achieved the second level, which is the distributors and dealers. As many technologies come to disintermediate and do online purchase and this kind of things, the distributors, the dealers, that in many countries have like more power sometimes than the input companies or less power, they started seeing they need to change as well. So they would guarantee their place, otherwise they would be displaced by technology. So they are like now integrating and being an important role on educating farmers on how to use the technology. As many technologies still arrive to the field without the simplicity needed for farmers to understand. In that point, I think India and Latin America has like similar context, which is like we have sometimes poor infrastructure in general, by connectivity, by energies, and so on. Education level of the farmers, as we have many smallholders, sometimes not educated, not agronomists, and it's not ready for them to interpret a lot of data and do their decisions. Of course, we both countries also have like super big agricultural groups, but they are not the majority of the production when we look into food safety, right? So there is this need of translation of either ag techs focusing more and in going to the last mile, like simplifying as much as possible the information so this very small farmer can digest it and can use it and obtain return on investment, from like the big raw crops that have own teams and big teams to process data. So I think this is a trend after the pandemic. More and more farmers and more and more ag techs understanding they have to go to the last mile, and it has speed up adoption. So like while we have been 2-3 years trying to educate the whole market, like governments, agronomists, the whole supply chain, the farmer themselves, and there have been the early adopters so far. I think we already achieved the early adopters as a nation, as a word adoption in technology. Now we need to cross the chasm and go to the mass market. And how to take digital agriculture to the mass farmers, we need the support of everyone in the supply chain. We need the food industries to be changing, and I think they will, now to create more resilient supply chain, to have more traceability and transparency. We need the input companies to use it, and they're already doing it with their own platforms. And we need the whole like government agronomists formed and educated. So I think digital now is important because of education. Before, even though we produced content online, like classes, webinars, like this talk that is also educative in a way, not many farmers were connected. And now during the pandemic, they have no other choice because the multinationals stopped doing visits as well. They stopped going to the farms. They have to do it either way. They have to enter Zoom. They have to use WhatsApp. They have to buy online. So they need to develop the trust, because before there was an option, which was a traditional business model. Now there's no option. So even those that were in the mass market waiting or maybe adopting it in a few years, now they are forced to do it. So we really believe that after the pandemic, they will be ready. There will be more farmers ready to adopt it, and it will support ag tech's growth. And I think the impact on the food supply chain is that we are finally able to bring the impact, because I think all of us, like you, me, we have many business cases on how we were able to help farmers to save water, input usage, increase yield, and so on, but they are still the early adopters. So we really need to have the impact we need on the supply chain and bring sustainability, we need mass adoption. So I think once we have mass adoptions of solutions like ours, we will achieve the impact we need for the world for a more resilient supply chain. And I don't see other way of doing that without the technology. And I think farmers and the whole ecosystem have noticed that as well.
I fully agree with what you just said. Like, first thing is that the farmers would be trusting these technologies more, because during this pandemic, they found that there is no other way of going forward than adopting it. So I'll just give you a small example which happened in our case. Our farmers actually, they themselves, they reached out to our agropreneurs, our on-ground team, that can you show us how to use a WhatsApp video, because we want to do a video call with our buyers, right? So previously when we were supposed to push things, now there is a pull effect where they are saying,
yes.
One of the farmer reached out to us and he said that actually, what is this Facebook? Can I sell my produce on that? I said, yeah, you can do that. So he said, can you help me in selling my produce on the Facebook? So you'll find that those things happening more. Only one a strong view I have is that we'll have to start leveraging such platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook more, because farmers, they have adopted them in a far, I'll say that scalable manner than actually our own applications. So maybe we'll have to start thinking on that, maybe with all working together, create a Facebook sort of application for all the agrotech companies, where your service can be plugged in, and then across the world you can utilize it. And I believe that we need collaboration far more today, because now we are seen as farmer as their saviors. So our responsibility has increased manifold, because you rightly said there is no other way to do it, right? So that we have to do it for them. So that means there is a huge factor of trust. And if we are not able to deliver, then shame on us. So I'm saying that onus is on us, you and me, to do it. Right. So now
I totally agree. And I believe for that, we come to another topic that influences that, which is capital, right? So I think especially for growing faster, and supporting all those farmers during this period, there will be a demand for capital for agtechs. And while the venture capital market is the speed went lower, they are waiting to make decisions. So I think there will be a challenge, at least on what we have seen down here in South America, on decision making on capital, and that might be a challenge. That's why I believe as well there will be a consolidation in the market. We decided to migrate towards a model of M&As. So we are looking into smaller companies so we can get together and grow, so we can achieve capillarity and give somehow access to capital as well. We also will need capital in the future, but at least we are capitalized now and we can support, because otherwise a lot of agtechs will die because they won't have the cash to go through the pandemic.
No, you're 100% right. Capital is always critical for any ecosystem to grow and be robust. And capital comes when actually, there is a collaborative efforts, right? Because ecosystem building cannot be by one company or two company. So see, one of the reason actually I've been doing these chat shows, right? For example, I've done nearly 35 of them with some of the top global leaders, right? And while doing those discussions, agriculture is always something which I try to push the agenda, that this is where it's going to be very, very important, very, very critical. And we'll have to work collaboratively, whether it is working with the governments, whether it is working with the United Nations or World Economic Forum. We'll have to push this agenda that actually we are the innovators and we need support. Because if you see today, the agriculture's another big problem is the transparency. Nobody wants the system to be transparent, right? And that is what is going to happen when you have more data. So I'm saying that few challenges which you and me will face, and we'll have to fight it together. I strongly believe we'll have to collaborate more, right? And there is sufficient business for all of us, right? We can take your technology innovation to parts of India where they are capable of getting results. You can try to think about the technologies which we are working on. For example, some experimentation of blockchain, which we can take into an existing system and plug and play. So what I'm saying is that we need to have more collaborative view of the problem. And I believe if you'll be to be honest to you, the 5th day of the COVID, I asked my team for a Zoom call, and there is business canvas where you put your competitors, you put all those box, right? The value, the service providers, and all those type of things. I asked my team that please strike it off the section which says competition. The COVID will ensure that there is no competition, right? We all are collaborators, right? So I'm really surprised that, you are the third prospective competition on my chat show. I did it with Cropin, right? Supposed to be my Indian competition. I did it with Hara, the Indonesian competition. You are not my competition because I'm not in Latin America, right? But you aspire to be in Asia, for sure you should, right? What I'm saying is that there is no competition. we have got close to 500 million farming households, right? We can all work together. So that brings us to the last question. It's very, very important question, right? Because we want to talk about what our experiences are, what the value which we want to give it to those youngsters, those new entrepreneurs, those new founders who would be entering agri-tech with the dreams in their eyes. So you are actually a country girl who has traveled the world, right? Someone who loves riding horses, at the same time also love riding technology waves. As a modern innovator rooted to the ground, what would be your recommendation to the ecosystem players, especially the founders, the startup entrepreneurs, and also in the second half, the investors in agri-tech domain?
I believe like now it's time for action. Like we don't have time to wait anymore. There is no perfect moment to launch a product. There is no perfect moment to invest or to start an enterprise. Now you have to do it. And I think, like you said, like my journey might be a little bit different from many entrepreneurs because I didn't study in a tier 1 university in the US. I didn't live in the capital or in Sao Paulo. So for me to get access to all of that network and be able to arrive where we were, it was like a matter of just trying, and like having a purpose. I really believe it's important for you to connect with what you do. I don't think it's important for you to have experience. Like you don't have to be from a farm to do agtech, right? But you have to fall in love with the problem and be willing to get like an immersion and understanding the problem enough so you can fight it. And I think like once you encounter that passion and you have your purpose, then you will find people in your way that will fall in love with the same thing, and they will help you, like you said, the collaboration, and they will guide you up. So I think please, like, no, just find your purpose, find what you make, what you're passionate about, and just do it, because it will go wrong anyway. It goes wrong so every day, right, Deepak? Like no matter, there's no such thing as a success point. We're always a failure and we're always a success at the same time in different things, and it goes evolving and changing. So I think like people have to start and not be waiting for a perfect moment, and be willing to make mistakes and be resilient, because I could have stopped many ways around the journey. There was many failures that I could say, okay, that's not for me and I won't do it. But it's just a matter of keep going and keep going after every failure until we reach something. And I think the most important thing in the end of the day is if you're changing people's lives.
That's awesome. In fact, love for your passion. I can tell you that, you are one of the example and motivation for that. I have never seen someone with a plastered leg going and attending the meeting in World Economic Forum, right? So that's talks about the passion which you had and you have even today. Mariana, thanks a lot. It was pleasure talking to you. And very rarely you have those people who always keep you infecting with the motivation and with the positive energy, and you are one of them. So thanks a lot. Stay safe, and let's all of us make this world a better place, especially for our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. It was a pleasure. I really love your idea of collaboration and ecosystem. I think that's what we really need to change the world. So count on me.
Yes.